Greetings and welcome, one and all.
Hello.
Hi.
I am Dr. Wolf, and I am joined by Tarek. Hello. And Lissy.
Heyo.
And we are actually recording on top of the cruise ship during final. On top of the cruise ship, in the middle of the cruise ship. Yeah, but you can see the decor behind us. We're in one of the sit-down areas on one of the decks. We've been on this boat all week long, and we've been having lots of fun.
It's been great.
Yeah.
We've been having some very geeky conversations as well. I have to admit, we've been having some very deep conversations, particularly in regards to Disney characters and Disney quotes.
Yeah.
You should see the three of us going back and forth on random Disney quotes all week long. We've been having so much fun with this.
Yeah. And actually, I'm very impressed. Liz is pretty good at it.
Oh yeah, she picks up on our quoting really quickly. we've only managed to stump her once, maybe twice the whole week.
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah, and she's come up with some pretty hard ones herself. We love doing those quoting games. Anyways, there was one conversation in particular that I found really fascinating that I'm not sure we really have a consensus on, so we wanted to bring this discussion to you in the audience and get your opinions on everything we're talking about here, because lots of Disney villains throughout the 2D and even some of the 3D animated films, they die at the end.
Yeah.
Most of them die, but some of them don't.
We see a number of villains, and we actually went through every Disney movie we could think of, and we determined if the villain actually died or not. So I mean, you have some that were definitely killed. You see Ursula, she gets stabbed through. Then you see others that it's implied very strongly that they were killed, like Scar, when you see the
shadows on the wall.
That was pretty scary.
Yeah. That's pretty definite he's dead.
But there are some Disney villains that clearly did not die at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And so the conversation we had was, did they deserve worse than they got?
Yeah. We're thinking of a list of top 10 Disney villains that we think deserved worse than what was shown on screen.
I agree.
A couple of caveats we have to name.
Sure.
We are not including sequels.
No sequels.
We are not talking about any Disney sequels. I know that there's always more that goes on with these characters in those direct-to-DVD sequels, but we're just going to pretend they don't exist for the purpose of this conversation. And while there are many Disney villains out there, we're trying to think of the ones that, for sure, we think should have had harsher punishments given what they went through and what they attempted.
Yeah.
So
we'll start with the lower tier first.
Yeah.
We had a number of villains on the bottom five that we thought deserved to be on the list, but weren't nearly as bad as the top tier. So
Right.
I think we could go, each one of us, and talk about one of them in turn. Want to do that?
Let's start with one that is actually a very fun villain that we watched as kids growing up. Let's talk about Mad Madam Mim.
From the Sword and the Stone.
From the Sword and the Stone. A shapeshifter who is just a ton of fun to watch, but when you look at the fact that she very clearly attempted to kill what she knew was a child, Wart, in the form of a sparrow, just for the sake of having fun. And then later on, very clearly attempted to cheat her way into killing Merlin, just because she wanted to be declared the victor. You could tell that she was doing it for fun, but at the same time, she is attempting murder, and at the end is basically having to deal with a few weeks of being sick, and having to deal with sunshine.
Malagalita Mocterosis.
Yes. So.
And you caught me, men.
Yes. So
Number 10.
we can think of many villains out there who deserve harsher punishments for not having died at the end, but Madam Min is probably on the lower tier.
Sure.
Yeah.
What have you got else?
All right. Another one that we think, number 9, would be Medusa from the Rescuers, the original Rescuers.
Madame Medusa.
Madame Medusa.
Yes.
Now, the crimes that she was guilty of, first she kidnapped a child, and then she forced that child into child labor. Not only child labor, but forcing her into very dangerous, life-threatening situations so that she could get that diamond.
Yeah.
Moreover, when she discovered the mice, she picked up that shotgun and she was firing very indiscriminately. She clearly had an intent to kill with that shotgun. Now, regardless of the fact that she did not succeed in killing anyone, her intent was very clear. So was it premeditated murder? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I can argue that she, in fact, was, because towards the end, when she had the diamond, she had the shotgun pointed at the girl and
Penny.
her...
And Snoops, her
And
assistant.
Snoops,
Yeah. Because she didn't want them to follow. And
Right.
if they did, I have a feeling she would have fired.
She would have fired at them
Okay.
if they attempted to follow.
Yeah,
so
granted.
There's that.
So the intent was definitely there. Now, on all counts, she did not succeed.
Right.
Thank goodness. But her intent puts her at number 9 on this list.
Right. Now, we had a couple of others in there. Would you want to talk about Miss Cruella de Vil?
Oh,
Yes.
have I have words about Cruella.
Words
de
about
Vil.
Cruella de Vil.
You have this woman who's so keen on making this new fabulous fur coat, and she is more than willing to steal hundreds of puppies by these crooks, that her henchmen, and it didn't matter how the job got done. She just said, "Get it done."
I don't care how you kill the little beast, just
Just
do it! And do it now!
Drown, poison them, drown them, bash them on the head. Oh,
You got any chloroform? Not a drop. And no eater. Either.
That's
Either.
these are puppies.
Yeah.
Now I hear real horror stories about people who actually abuse puppies, like puppy mills and stuff. But this is more extreme. This is legitimately going out of her way to slaughter puppies for a coat.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty bad, but what makes it a little bit worse is that towards the end, she was so determined to hide the evidence from ever getting out that she was going to run a truck off the road, including its driver. Think about that for a bit.
Okay, so reckless driving, animal kidnapping, intent to murder animals,
Right.
And possibly a person.
And possibly a person.
and possibly
Yeah.
a person. So, did she succeed? Well, she succeeded in kidnapping, yes.
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 Almost got away with it. And at the end, we don't know if anything happens to her. We don't know. It's not like the dogs could tell their owners what had happened.
No, we find her in a snowy field in a wreck with her henchmen, and she's crying her little heart out because she's never going to get that coat.
Yeah, that's okay.
Spoiled rotten. At any rate.
Anyways,
Okay, so next on the list.
we also have lower tier. We want to go for a 3D film this time, computer generated. Hans from Frozen.
Yeah.
Yes. First half of the film, you wouldn't think that he was a villain at all. He was actually trying to show himself to be very helpful and taking part in a very cliche, fall in love immediately Disney romance story. But first half of the film, you wouldn't think that he was a bad guy.
No, he did a very good guy.
But when he finally showed his true colors, how much did the audience come to despise the person he was? His subtlety in trying to play everyone against each other and end up on top, knowing full well what was really going on behind the scenes. And towards the end, he decided that the way to get what he wanted was to take matters into his own hands, bringing out a sword, killing both sisters, letting one literally freeze to death, and the other he was going to cut down in cold blood. Yikes.
That is monstrous.
This was regicide. for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Now, what happens to him at the end?
Kaboom.
He gets punched in the face
And thrown overboard.
and thrown overboard.
Only to be snatched back up, thrown in the cell, and delivered back to his brothers.
Okay. Anyways, we still feel like the guy deserved harsher punishment. It's possible that he did get a harsher punishment. He could be his reputation is ruined. It could be that he'd be thrown into prison for the rest of his life. But we don't know that because it wasn't shown.
Yeah.
So, as far as Disney villains that deserve harsher punishments, I think that's a clear contender.
Okay. And then
Next up,
finally the last
for
one
the lower tier,
on the lower tier. Now remember, we are disregarding sequels.
Right.
And so the last one is Jafar from Aladdin. Now
Okay.
we realize in the sequel he was essentially killed, but we are going to disregard that for now.
disregard that for now.
At the end of the first movie, he was still alive, but imprisoned in the lamp.
And for all we know, 10,000 years in the Cave of Wonders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is that punishment pretty harsh?
Pretty darn harsh.
It's pretty
Yes.
harsh.
I'd say so. However, let's look at what Jafar did. Jafar had been manipulating the Sultan, for I don't know how many years.
Yes.
But and clearly it wasn't the first, when we saw him hypnotizing the Sultan, clearly that wasn't the first time he had done it. And so we don't know how long Jafar had just been manipulating the Sultan to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
In addition, he tried to kill Aladdin a number of times.
How many times do I have to kill you?
Exactly. Exactly. So at least 3 that he tried to kill Aladdin.
Yes.
All right. In addition to that, he tried to use one of his wishes to force Jasmine to become his love slave.
Oh boy.
No. And even though that wish didn't work because he didn't know their quid pro quos and provisos and all
Yeah,
that.
that's still deeply despicable.
That is just-
Oh wow.
It's like every girl's worst nightmare.
Yeah. Where basically Jasmine would have no choice for the rest of her days.
Okay.
Dwell on that for a bit.
That's pretty bad. Yeah.
I'd rather not.
And then finally, to top it all off, premeditated murder.
Yeah.
Because he and Iago had conspired to throw Papa-in-law and the little lady
woman off a cliff.
So, all of that together makes Jafar a pretty bad guy.
Yeah. And for sure, at the end of the first film, not dead.
Not dead.
Not that.
10,000 years in the Cave of Wonders, pretty darn harsh, but
That's more
I
than a
don't
life.
know.
That's more than a life sentence.
that is more than a life sentence.
Yeah.
That's
It's
several
just
life
it's just
sentences.
something to consider. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, by the way. Let's get to the upper tier. And the first one we want to get to, do you want to talk about
Shere Khan.
Shere Khan? Oh, Shere Khan, the deep voice of Shere Khan. How he's so proper in his evil. Why should you run? Could it be possible that you don't know who I am?
Conceited too.
And you
Right.
should know that everyone runs from Shere Khan.
He's just so confident in how powerful he is, how terrifying he is.
I'm gonna disregard the live action one because in the live action he actually does die.
Yeah, he does die in the live action one. And the live action one, he's a pretty bad guy for sure.
Terrifying.
But original cartoon did not die, so we want to talk about him for this list.
Okay.
So you have an animal who despises man so much because they invented fire
And guns.
and guns.
Yes.
Shere Khan likes to be in power. He's the most terrifying thing in the jungle, and now he has 2 things to compete with. He doesn't like that.
Speak a little louder, probably.
So he basically says to himself, well, I'll just kill every man I come across. And that includes children.
Yes.
So that is tantamount to what? Gosh, I can't remember the word.
I would call it genocide.
Genocide. Thank you.
Genocide. He would have enacted genocide if he had the power to do so. Yeah, right.
And he was willing to kill other animals to get what he wanted to. He almost killed Baloo.
Almost, very closely.
He strongly said, "I'll kill you for this."
I'll kill you for
And the
this.
claws came out.
Right.
And he was real.
Right.
And yeah, if it weren't for the other animals, he probably would have succeeded.
Right. Okay. So now we're getting to the point where we actually have three contenders for who might be in the number 2 spot. We'll get to number 1 for sure, which we have all agreed.
Yeah.
Number 1 is pretty darn scary.
Yeah.
But we have 3 contenders who we think are pretty closely tied, but we each have our own ideas on who should be number 2. So why don't you start us off, Terry,
All right.
with your entry?
My contender is Mayor Bellwether from Zootopia.
Yeah,
Now-
very recent villain.
Yeah.
Very
Now, did she? She was one that worked behind the scenes. She's after everything was said and done, she was a master planner,
Oh yes.
and she played the part of the bumbling secretary very well. However, what she wanted to do was this is like the epitome of racism, because she wanted to take all of the predators in the entire city, perhaps even the nation, and suppress them. In order to do this, she hired a hitman, and she got either heard about it or was told about it, or I don't know. Maybe she discovered the formula herself. We don't know.
Right.
But the whole thing with the night howlers, essentially inducing predators to their feral instincts so that they could attack, maim, and potentially kill other animals, even those who she was trying to represent, i.e. the prey animals. And so her line, she said, I'll dart every predator in this city if I have to.
Fear always
wins.
Yes.
Okay? And now her motivation, she wanted power, of course. And she wanted to be able to suppress an entire, not just a species, but an entire segment
Yeah.
of the population.
You couldn't really say that she was doing it for the sake of prey animals, because prey animals were very clearly being injured
And
and
killed.
perhaps one day even killed by the actions that she was taking,
Yep.
darting these predators.
Yep.
So she didn't care that any prey were getting hurt along the way. She just wanted to be in power.
So, with Mayor Bellwether's blatant disregard for life, and the superiority that she felt over a segment of the population, and she had no qualms about suppressing them, about drugging them, even killing them. I think Mayor Bellwether is a pretty serious contender for second place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to admit, it's pretty close with these other 2 entries.
Yeah.
Although, speaking of which, would you like to talk about one in particular?
General
Governor.
Governor
Governor Radcliffe from Pocahontas. Yeah.
Now, his motivations has always been clear that he wanted gold.
Yes.
He was overcome with greed, and he believed by going to this new world, they would find just
oodles
loads
and oodles of gold. He sings an entire song about
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
only to find that the land is enriched, but it doesn't have gold, as he so claims.
Yeah.
But then he finds out about the savages, in other words, natives, and believes that they may actually be hoarding all this gold for
Yeah.
themselves. And he comes up with a scheme to spread fear throughout his men that these people will kill you if we don't kill them first.
Right.
And when it comes right down to it, when John Smith is kidnapped and he was going to have his head crushed by the natives, but Pocahontas was able to negotiate with her father and basically redirect that rage, and that this isn't what we're meant to do, this isn't who we are, these people are explorers and we should be befriending them and stuff like. And when she expressed all that, the rest of the men followed behind because they didn't want to start a war, they wanted to explore. And learn from these people.
Yeah.
But Radcliffe, on the other hand,
Yeah.
was willing to start a war even when the head chief of the natives was disarmed.
Right. His own men refused to attack. Refused to follow his orders. They basically said they don't want to
They don't wanna
fight.
Yeah.
Governor Radcliffe knew for sure there wasn't going to be a war at that point.
Unless you
Neither
did something.
side wanted to fight. He was so determined to incite a war between two nations that he was going to take a gun and shoot the chief who had only moments before thrown down his weapon and was not going to fight. That was very cold-blooded, and all to incite two peoples to slaughter each other.
For gold.
That is truly despicable behavior. That could have very long-lasting ramifications between two peoples for generations to come. Who knows how many people would have died from the ensuing conflict?
Well, we do know from history tells us there were a lot
There
of
have been.
Spanish
Absolutely.
explorers and Native Americans that were killed in these battles. But
Yep.
eventually there was peace, thank goodness.
Yes. But that one action above everything else he did in that movie would have had very long-lasting ramifications. Who knows when that could have ended?
So, another contender for
Another
second place.
contender for second place, which is really hard to determine who is worse. But I've got one more for second place that he's done some pretty nasty things. We're talking Prince John from Robin Hood. Now here's a man, with the help of his assistant Hiss, had hypnotized King Richard, according to that particular story, into going off on that crazy crusade.
Anyway,
All to take control of the English crown.
so all of this, we've been talking about people desiring power, desiring money. He did it.
He pulled it
succeeded.
off.
He pulled it
it
off.
off. Now, things were staying pretty much the same for a while until Robin Hood came along and decided that Prince John was not the rightful ruler, and long live King Richard. And the taxes that Prince John was putting on the people were already harsh by that point. And then it reaches a time where Prince John discovers that the people are making fun of him through song. And he goes to an all-new level of evil. He inflicts taxes so severe, he completely impoverishes the entirety of Nottingham. You look at the city, and every single house has seized by the government signs on them. I don't know what the words were.
And they didn't pay, they arrested you.
Yeah, they went to
And
jail.
If you couldn't pay your taxes, you were imprisoned. Forced labor for the rest of your life. Now that already is pretty dastardly.
And these people are starving and living
These
on
people
the
are
streets.
starving and in prison.
And so we can see, the scene in the jail cell when this rabbit, all he has is this little chunk of cheese, and a little piece falls off, and the mouse picks it up, and all he has is just this piece, and he actually splits it in between 4 different mice. So that
Each
they
of
can-
them have one mouthful.
So
That's
that
all
they
they've
can
got.
each
That
have
actually
something to
made me
eat.
tear up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty sad song. It goes even further, because even after all of this, he has impoverished who knows how many people, imprisoned who knows how many people. You look at him in the very next scene, and he is sitting in his throne enraged.
surrounded by gold.
He is surrounded by riches, and it does nothing. He doesn't care. He is just sitting there, seething,
because
he doesn't have Robin Hood. That's the only reason why he started this in the first place. He doesn't care how many people he's crushed underfoot. He just wants Robin Hood. And he nearly would have strangled Hiss in that scene if Hiss hadn't unintentionally given him a new idea, which again takes it a step further when he decides he's going to hang Friar Tuck, a man of the church, just to get to Robin Hood. He's going to kill a man,
A righteous man.
church.
a righteous man of the church, just to get to Robin Hood.
That's just... See, when Friar Tuck was originally arrested, he was arrested because he defended the church.
He was defending the poor,
And
who
the
had
poor.
absolutely nothing.
Like,
And the Sheriff of Nottingham deserves an honorable mention.
Yeah.
Because he's a pretty dastardly character, one you despise with every fiber of your
But-
being.
After all, he was working for Prince John.
Still
But he
acting evil and as
relished.
much as he possibly could. He was
Sure.
relishing it.
he loved doing
He loved
this
what
job.
he was doing. Okay.
It was just
So
awful.
after trying, he planned the murder of a man of the church. Then he planned a trap for Robin Hood, and obviously he planned to kill Robin Hood as well, because the mention of the double hanging.
Yeah.
And then even later on in the movie, when Robin Hood was trying to escape, Prince John, he was sitting there,
Kill him!
kill him,
He was very childish in his mannerisms, but
His intent was
his
clear.
intent was very clear.
Okay. So, the three number twos.
I would still contend that Prince John is just a little worse than those other two, but we're going with a three-way tie between those two.
Yeah.
However,
Number one.
I came up with a number one choice that no matter how much we discussed, no matter how much we could go back and forth, none of us could come up with anything worse. No character that could possibly be worse that was shown to
Well,
still be alive,
yeah. there
as
you
far as we know. We're going to go all the way back to the film Pinocchio. Now, it is possible that this character was given a name in the movie, but for the life of us, we can't remember whether that ever was mentioned. The gentleman,
And you
this-
only see him for what, about
you only see him for a
6 minutes?
few
Seen him
minutes
a
in
few
the film, but he initiates a plan to bring who knows how many children, hundreds of children, to Pleasure Island for the eventual purpose of turning them into donkeys and selling them into mining shafts,
slavery.
Slavery.
where their families will never know what had ever happened to them. And the boys, who knows how many boys, who knows how long he's been doing this, who knows the end of the film, you never see him. You never see what happened to these boys. He never gets punished.
Yeah.
Nothing ever happens to him. And the thought of all these countless children being sold into slavery, never being able to talk ever again, and who knows what had happened to the ones who could still talk. They were thrown to the side, and you were left to your imagination on what could have happened to them. They were terrified of this man with the whip. And you see in his opening scene that those few seconds when he looks close to the camera and he says, "They won't come back as boys." And he just starts laughing.
And it even scares the henchman.
How many children watching that movie, watching this character, watching that scene of a character being turned into a donkey? What was his name? Lampwig?
Lampwig.
Lampwig.
That is terrifying to watch.
He was
He
screaming
did
for
that.
his
This man willingly brought that on countless children.
So,
And what do you say to that? Talking about the top Disney villains that deserved harsher punishments. Talk about a villain that you never see any punishment for, ever.
And who
it's
is-
left
yeah.
entirely open-ended.
And he probably would continue to still do it.
Yeah,
yeah.
He's
he'll
probably
keep
still
doing it. What would stop him? if no one ever finds out, why would he ever stop doing it?
See, that could be its own story, like following one of those boys who gets sold into the mines, or the ones that are still talking. We can follow their story. That would be another Disney movie.
I don't think that would be a Disney movie because
No.
Disney just wouldn't touch the subject.
I'm surprised that Disney went that far. It was still in their early days. This came out in 1940,
Yeah,
but wow.
very
You
creepy.
think about that.
So
We can't think of any Disney villain that could have ever deserved harsher punishment because he actually got away with it. He got away with it.
So, that's our top 10 list. Yeah, as you can see, we have very deep and compelling discussions here
Yeah.
on a cruise ship.
Very geeky discussions when we are constantly quoting Disney lines back and forth. Eventually we get into discussions, who would you consider to be the most evil Disney character?
Yeah.
Who would you consider to have the most capacity for evil, the most desire for evil?
Yeah.
And then we thought, well, what about Disney villains that didn't die at the end? And the more we talked about it, the more we realized, wow, some
Yeah.
of those Disney villains, they
Really
deserved much
bad.
worse than what they actually got.
So, we want to apologize for the sometimes dark nature of this video, but it
Yeah.
is a question that we thought was pretty interesting, and we'd like to hear your comments in the spaces below.
Yeah. You can tell that we have lots of fun conversations when the three of us get together. Whether it be at conventions or being on a ship for a week. We're just having fun. But let us hear what you think of the list we've given thus far, and perhaps any Disney villains we might have missed that didn't die and perhaps could deserve harsher punishments in their own right. But in the meantime, I am Dr. Wolf,
And I'm Tarek Dragon.
I'm Lightning Bliss.
and we look forward to hearing from you.